Okay. Yep. Next, we have item TE 29.311, 2 through 16 Sumach Street, official plan amendment, zoning amendment, and rental housing demolition applications preliminary report. We have a deputant on this item, Martin Trainor. Martin, are you with us?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Yes, I am with you.
Welcome, Martin. You'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. You can begin as soon as you're ready.
Well, Mr. Chair, I am also not under 10 years old, but I do bring the enthusiasm of living in a magical building for the last 20 years. And I may also refer you to some visuals which I have submitted to you previously. This would be a set of 5 slides. If I can look at the first one, it's basically the cubes. Everybody knows the cubes coming in from the Don Valley Parkway. You can see this little cluster of emerald green buildings right there. This is where the magic happens. Basically, it's a Dutch design. It was brought here in 1995, 96, and it's really been quite a presence in the whole neighborhood. You can see from the slides there that the community and myself have really brought the gardens to life with tulips, and there's lots of wildlife. There's a groundhog, all this. There's a vegetable garden. So really the community on Sumach Street has come together in the attraction of the cubes, basically. So I'm speaking neither for nor against this development, but I am speaking on the fact that there's a demolition permit on my home. And so I really want to bring you the background of what it feels like to live in the cubes. So the Dutch design, as you may see from one of the slides there in Rotterdam, they are considered a municipal monument in the city of Rotterdam, which has always had a tradition of fabulous architecture. So the cubes are a licensed design brought by the Unitri Corporation to Toronto to be put on this marginal land. Now this marginal land then has become the center of the entire West Donlands development here. But if you can see from the slide, the yellow cubes of Rotterdam then are a big attraction. But there's one particular portion down there of this what looks like a scaffolding of a building, and this is how the Dutch would honor the previous building which had been there. Let's say this one was bombed during the Second World War, and they maintained the framework of it. So if the cubes are going to be moved for this 35-story development, then what's going to happen to them? Are they going to go the way of Fillmore's, let's say, or Captain John's boat? Well, it would be a shame to lose this attraction when Toronto is basically faced with buildings that reflect each other. So the cubes are an integral part of the landscape, I would say. And these slides, if you can see, do give you a feeling of what it's like to be on the inside of the cube. Even the negative space of this box on its point is useful. But really, you look up into the peak, which is 22 feet above, and it's beautiful night and day. Now, if the cubes were going to be moved, or let's say have to make room for this development, is it possible they can be moved by the owner of the design, that is, which I'm aware has been ceded to the Métis Indigenous Nation. So the land immediately east of the cubes on the other side of the Adelaide flyover, you can see there on slide number 4, basically this little triangle of land, which is a city-owned land as far as I know, is a little meadow, and I've spent many a sunny afternoon there, in among the reeds and lying on the grass. It's beautiful. So can this be made available, let's say, for any, let's say, replication of the cubes? And I think other people will speak on that in future deputants. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to talk to you about that.
Thank you so much, Martin. Are there any questions for Martin? Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank you. Martin, thank you so much for your deputation, and I regret that we were not able to share your slides on the screen while you were speaking, but I do know that the materials that you submitted are in front of the councillor, so please rest assured that did happen. Martin, my first question to you is, your proposal regarding the cubes to have them relocated. You are aware, I believe, that the cubes are not a listed or designated property Heritage Act. Is that correct?
I understand that, and it's not my decision or request to move them, but it would have to be the owners of the design that would have to bring that up. But yes, I understand that.
Yeah, thank you. And so your proposal is that as part of the development review, that city staff as well as the community and the applicant work together to find these cubes a new home if they are to be repurposed. Is that correct?
A new home would be suitable for me. I've been renting here for 20 years, and it's quite suitable for me, for sure. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I meant that the cubes would have a new home, like being placed somewhere on the site or within the vicinity of the neighborhood.
Yes, I think they are an integral part of Corktown at this point, and if there was any way to replicate that. The slide number 5 actually shows how the cubes could be put into that little piece of land immediately to the east, and that would give you a feeling for what this 35-story building is going to look like behind the cubes, or even on top of the building. How about that? So just anything that can just keep the memory of this unique building alive would be really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Martin, in the past, the City of Toronto has struggled with trying to preserve or commemorate iconic symbols, cultural symbols, and the cube may end up being one of those interesting challenges. When the Reckerman store was being demolished, there was a bit of an outcry to save the signs, although they were not listed or designated under the Heritage Act. I think the same thing happened with the Tip Top Tailors building. People kind of wanted to hang on to the sign, even though there was really nothing that bound by law that we could use to compel a developer to do it. In your words, why should the city do it? What is the cultural value of these cubes? Is it connected to the identity of the neighborhood? Is it connected to the identity of the city? Why should council do this?
It is totally connected to the identity of the Corktown in this case, and the entrance to the city from the east is really, this is the welcome that people get as they come into here. So it's a memory for sure for many people, but it's really something that should be preserved in some form. As you were talking about Fillmore's earlier on, this is something that people tend to see as their neighborhood, and when parts of the neighborhood are gone, then what is the city? It could be any city, anywhere, but you need these unique items of rare architectural beauty that can fulfill that.
Yeah, so thank you. And my final question is, the staff recommendation here is to propose the demolition of the 4 existing rental dwellings, which is known as the cubes. But you're actually here before us not necessarily proposing that we stop this development or that we refuse the report. You're proposing that we proceed with the consultation with the community, and that part of the consultation will be a conversation and a constructive dialogue on how to repurpose this dynamic structure. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, there are 3 cubes. It's a tripod. Each cube is on a single pole that goes all the way up through each unit. So it's 3 cubes that are standing there, and people are often unaware that it is a habitat, and so it would be very good to see these being repurposed.
Okay. Martin, thank you very much for your deputation and for answering my questions.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members who have questions for Martin? No? Martin, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Have a good afternoon.
You're welcome, Councillor.
Or a good
You're
morning.
welcome, Councillor. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Yep.
Are there any questions of staff on this item? I don't see any. Councillor Wong-Tam, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to move a motion to amend the staff recommendations. First of all, we definitely want to proceed with community consultation, and part of that provision is to make sure that we provide ALDA accommodations, which includes sign language interpretation if it's needed at those community meetings. And then following that, I'd like to set up, I'm proposing that we set up a working group, both for the site plan as well as the zoning amendment and OP amendment, so that we can just spend a little bit more time with the applicant and the community as well as affected stakeholders to see if there's a way that we can shape this application to really, number one, maybe meet the prescriptions of the zoning bylaw that exists in place, but also to spend a little bit of time thinking about, how do we actually build a neighborhood out in this area that actually is going to be even more inclusive, and I'll speak to the application in a moment. But an additional part of the work that I'm hoping that we can do is, as a community, coming together to think about how can we repurpose the cubes or the cube house, depending on how you want to affectionately call them. And I think that it's worth an exploration. So this will be an intellectual exercise where we're going to have to think creatively on how to try to take advantage of a cultural asset that we've probably taken advantage of, and have not necessarily spent a lot of time speaking of, but yet we all know it's there. It's a gateway, as Martin has correctly spoken to, when we come into the city from the east end. Ellen, if you can take down the screen, and I don't know if you can show the images. I want to just continue speaking and using my time. If you can put that up, that would be great. Thank you so much, Ellen. You are wonderful. If you can just make it just a little larger, and I will get going. This application is of interest. You folks all know the site, even if you have driven by, cycled by, or perhaps walked by. I think the things that we probably, if you were to actually walk by it, this is probably the best part of it. If you were to walk by it, you'll see that it's a very unusual site. Thanks, Ellen. If you can go back to the first image, that would be the best. If you can walk by, you can see that it's a triangulated site. It's bound by, obviously, a number of city streets, and then you've got the freeway that sort of flies over it and the underpass. It's a very challenging site. To be quite honest, I didn't think anybody would ever take a stab at it, because it seemed to me there were a number of restrictions, including the fact that it was more along the lines of a site. Thank you. If you could just hang on to this picture, that'd be great. It's almost a site that you sort of kind of look at it from a distance, and you have this amazing depth of field of view, and you don't really get close to it because the access to the site is so poor and it's so inaccessible. So from a distance is how you imagine and enjoy this particular parcel of land, which is such an iconic gateway marker from the east end to the west end to the downtown. But yet at the same time, we all know the cubes. And Martin was so gracious to invite me into his home, and you can see pictures of his apartment there. He's been a resident for over 20 years. And I got a really intimate look at the cubes. I was able to understand the charm, and is it something that we would build in terms of massive density and housing in the city? Probably not for our North American sensibilities. Have the Dutch done it? Absolutely. They have all sorts of projects in certain parts of the cities where they have actually played with dimensions of the cube, which is, so it becomes sculptural, not just functional. And I think that's what the beauty is for me. And you'll also see on the image here, there's some land that perhaps the cubes can be perhaps repurposed. Obviously, they won't be housing, but is there a way for us to interpret and allow for that interpretation and commemoration to take place in a new development? I don't know the answers to that, but I certainly am very curious and I'm very eager to explore that conversation further with the applicant, which is Marquee Development. The application itself is pretty interesting, and I don't spend a lot of time talking about preliminary reports. Very few of us actually do, but I do want to recognize that this application is unique. They're proposing a 35-story building comprised of 443 dwelling apartments. There will be retail space introduced at the base of the building, which I think is quite courageous because you can see from this image, you need to be able to drive people, like literally move people there in order for that retail to be successful. And so there is a proposal here to actually introduce new retail space. So to me, that's a intellectual curiosity that I want to explore, because retail spaces, as we know, need pedestrian activity. It needs human animation. It needs sticky streets so people will want to come because it's desirable and it's a unique experience. And they're going to have to put a lot of thoughtfulness into their retail strategy. So I want to just be able to recognize that. They're also proposing in this application something unusual, which is 119 affordable rentals. I did not have to ask councillors. Marquee Development walked through the door and said, I'd like to go to affordable housing. And the conversation went from there, which I'm hoping will be building strength upon strength moving forward. So I want to just draw my conclusions to an end and just say thank you, Martin, once again for taking the time to depute. Thank you for pointing out the importance of the Cube House and the Cubes to all of us here at Community Council. I'm really interested in knowing where this conversation goes. I will be very keen in hearing community feedback and the ideas that will probably germinate from the working group. And I'm looking forward to seeing this to its end and final report. And hopefully we can do something innovative, something that hasn't been done in the city before, something that perhaps comes out of just really strong dialogue and a desire for people to build an inclusive neighborhood that's beautiful, sculptural, and also respectful of its heritage, even if it's contemporary heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of Councillor Wong-Tam? No? Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? No? Then we'll take the motion and the item together. All those in favor, opposed, carried. That takes us to TE 29.32, 682, 686, 688, 720, 740, and 742 Broadview Avenue. Official plan, zoning, bylaw amendment applications, preliminary report.